Hi, I'm Ali and welcome to the China Repair Studio. And so today I thought I would show you how I'm going to paint in the part of Dick Turpin's hat. Now on my previous video I had actually sanded the hat and I've put Milliput on there. He's all sanded and he is now ready to paint. So I thought I'll show you how I'm going to paint him and put on a glaze at the final end so you can see then it all blends in with the rest of the hat with the shine. Right, before though, if you haven't subscribed before, please subscribe, please like and also please share. Now, first things first is I do like to put a cloth on my table because any pigment which will go onto any other cloth is just going to seep in and you'll never get it out. Now, the paints I use, I tend to use a mixture of acrylics and powder pigments, and I really do rate Winsor and Newton, and their professional acrylic range is very good. And also I have plenty of pigments here which I did buy a very long time ago. I think it was in King's Road in London, a place called Green and Stone. And so again, you know, they weren't cheap, but a little bit goes a long way, and I've had these for years, as you can see, well and truly loved. So variety of colours, and then we have our paintbrushes, and I have plenty here, all different varieties. I do recommend on paintbrushes to use something with a sable brush, sable hairs. It's softer and it just paints so much better than really cheap paintbrushes. You do unfortunately get what you pay for, and again, if looked after well, they will last for years. And another thing I have is a white plate. I do like a white one rather than another colour, because when I'm putting on paints here I can actually see the true colour. If it's all full of different colours, or I don't know, if it's got some sort of form of pattern on it, you're not really going to see the colour so well. So if you can get hold of a white plate or a white tile, or even, yeah, that would be the best actually. And we need some water, clear water. And then most importantly, when we're glazing and when we're painting, to help fix the paint on, is that I use Rustins ceramic glaze. Now again, a little bit goes a long way. So what I tend to do is I transfer some of the glaze from the large pot here into a smaller pot. And I've just written down what it is, because it dries very quickly. So if you keep opening and closing, it's not going to last so long. It's going to dry out and thicken up. So if you could just transfer it into another pot and use that for a while, and then just put, you know, a new batch in when needed. Right, so I think that's the kind of fundamentals, if you like. I do have on one of my other videos something on all the equipment I use, if you want to look back on that. And I also do have playlists on other painting of pottery in China. Right, so let's get cracking. So we've got his black hat, so we need black, obviously. It's quite dark. So here I have ivory black, and it's a powder pigment, and I would just apply just a little bit. Now let's have a look. I would go for a nice sable brush. That's a nice sable brush just to paint. Yeah, that's a good size. So what I would do first is I would just take, I tend to use the end sometimes, or a cocktail stick, and just put a little bit onto the plate. So I just put some, I always have some spare kitchen roll as well. So put some onto a plate. Cocktail stick as well, quite useful. Right, so once that's on, I like to then just put in a tiny bit of water. So if you just, with the brush, just dip it in and then just put some water onto the plate. And then if you just mix it and see how that goes. Now, obviously, this is going to be, you know, it's not so thick, so we'll probably have to apply 2 or 3 lots amounts. But when you mix powder pigment with water, you don't want to directly apply it onto the china piece or the pottery piece. I tend to like to use a tiny bit of the glaze with it because it holds it in place better. So here's my glaze, and then with a cocktail stick, just a little bit, and then just pop that in, and that will actually, remember to close that so it doesn't dry, that will actually help fix the paint in place. So I can just see a bit there, and I'd mix it in. If I want to, I could go a little bit darker, a bit more black, and then just mix that in nicely. Now I don't have too much there. As I say, it will probably take 2 or 3 goes. So here we are with the black paint, and now just gently apply, mainly to the bit first, which has got the white on. We'll blend it a bit in a minute. You can see there. I can also see, apart from the top part of his hat, also here where his head had previously come off and I'd fixed it on, can you see there's a line? So I'm just going to blend that in as well. So very carefully, you don't need to make it too thick. You don't want it to be, you know, dripping at all. And then just on that bit there. It's quite faded in places. So once he's just had the first lot, which I'll just see there. So it's all blending in now. You can see it's very faded here. It's quite, you can see the shiny bits and the darker bits. So I'm going to blend that in a second. I'm just going to let that dry for a moment. Whilst doing that, I did notice one of his eyebrows. Can you see just here? It's just missing a tiny part of his eyebrow, which is quite tricky. You know, you don't want to be doing a big blob. So you need so I'm just going to put a tiny piece of dark on his eyebrow while I'm here. So I would use a very, very small, very fine brush here. And I think it doesn't even say what it is. Does it say? It's another Winsor & Newton. Doesn't say what grade. But anyway, so I'm going to a little bit of black on there and try to make it into a point. You don't want lots of stray hairs. You want a nice point. And then I can see here where he just needs just a little bit. Not too much. Just ever so, but it's evened him out now. So he now looks good. You don't want to be overdoing it. Right, so let's see, because we've used, it should be dry now, the paint. So let's put some more, do another coat, and then we can finish him off with some glaze. So we've still got our paint here. It hasn't dried up completely yet. And then we're just going to blend him in a bit. So here we are with the hat. So there was a bit down here. And just blend him. You can almost feather it out slightly in a feathering motion, because you don't want a hard line. Just blending him in. So you don't want it too thick. And just blend him. You can just go by feel. Right, and then his hat, it was there. You don't want to line on colour, so if you can blend it, that's even better. These Staffordshire pieces were very naive in their painting. They were painted, as I did say previously, by probably small children in the Victorian times, but definitely home workers. People would work from home, and they would paint the Staffordshire. And there are many others. I don't want to touch his gilding. And that just blends it all in, if you can see. So it's looking quite smart now. That's not his head, is it? No, that was previous, that's fine. Right, so once I'm quite happy, I can't see any white patches. It's all quite blended in. I think, and it's starting to dry. Just have a look and see if there's some other bits and pieces on the tail I will do a bit later as well, just to sort of brighten him up slightly, brighten the horse. But while he's drying, the thing I'd like to do now is just keep everything clean and clear, and then we can put the final glaze on. So always make sure when you've finished your brushes that when you wash them, not to leave them in water, because if you leave them in water, they do deteriorate quite quickly. So just really keep brushes clean. And then, as I say, kitchen roll. Right, so what I'm going to do now is take a tiny bit of the glaze, and I'm just going to glaze the eyebrow, that tiny little bit which I did earlier, just so it holds in, and then I'm going to put the glaze onto his hat. So with the Rustins ceramic glaze, again, nice clean brush. This is a nice sable one. Doesn't say what type. Anyway, so there we are. So just a tiny bit of glaze. I'll find a nice clean area on the plate. Don't want to mix it. Again, you don't need very much, just a little bit. Always put that on. Right, so I'm just going to just dab a bit off. I don't want too much where his eyebrow was. So the eyebrow, just this little bit here. You don't want to make a thick line, just a little bit, just enough to hold. Doesn't have to be too much. Right, and then rinse. And then finally we're going to do his hat. Now I do like to use a flat brush when I'm doing any form of glaze. I do find you don't end up with so many bristle marks. You could use another sable brush. This is another one. Again, just make sure they're sable. This is quite a small area, so I probably would use a brush. If I was doing a plate, I would use something flatter, like a flat brush. So we've got our nice sable brush, and I'm just going to dip it into the glaze we have there. Actually, I might just put a tiny bit more in. As I say, you don't want to drip it, but you want plenty. So put this all onto there, you can see. Right, so take a little bit, take some off the brush, make sure there's not too much on there, and then we will put them on here. Right, so I'm going to start from here and work my way out. I'm going to glaze the whole hat actually, so it all blends in nicely. So again, you don't want to do too much, just a little bit. And just work your way along. And then it starts here. So you don't want too much glaze, you don't want to make it too liney. And then do the other part of his hat. This will just blend him in nicely. And then the top part, so again, a little bit more of the glaze. Now, when you are doing this, you don't want to create too many bubbles. Sometimes you can end up with bubbles on here, and you want to disperse those if you do get any. Looking quite. And another important thing is once you've glazed, don't go over it again, because the glaze dries very quickly. So if you're glazing and then a minute later you're putting more glaze on and it's still tacky, you would end up with lots of ridges and lines. So once you've done one lot of glaze, if you do want to glaze it again, make sure it's completely dry. I would give it at least an hour to really set and dry, then put another lot of glaze on. But usually one tends to do. So here we are, he's all glazed. His hat's back on. and is just drying on the top. As you can see, he's still got some patches on there. That's just drying nicely. And there we go. And that's how to paint a hat or a small piece on a piece of Staffordshire, and yeah, and how to glaze. So again, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and also please like, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.